The 51-year-old rock and roller was looking relaxed, coming out of hiding after spending 2 days in Perth, preparing for his Friday night world premiere concert.
It's lovely to be in Perth. Brilliant. Huh?
Where are you staying? Got a nice place?
Yeah, outside the town. All right, darling? Great.
Big concert coming up. Are you expecting it to be quite tough?
Thanks, Paul. Tough?
Thanks, Paul.
No, I'm hoping for it to be a groove.
You're wonderful.
Brilliant. See you later. Paul.
Inside 96 FM, McCartney joined Bob Geldof co-hosting the Drive Time show. They spoke about music legends such as Ray Charles.
No, Ray Charles, I heard What Did I Say? It was one of the first things I ever heard on the radio, and it just made the hair on my body stand up. You know, it was like big, formative record for me. And the DJ was really cool because he played both sides, which you probably haven't got time for today, but that's cool.
The billionaire musician-singer received a grilling from Geldof about his Beatle rival, John Lennon.
What I don't want to do now is really try and be too defensive, and particularly because he's dead. You know, I don't want to say, oh, we couldn't write for Toffee. You know, I wouldn't do that now, just out of respect for him. But John was great. He was a great genius, you know, and I was very lucky to write with him. But I think he was lucky to write with me, too, he said modestly.
McCartney will perform to a capacity audience at Subiaco Oval on Friday, the launch of his Australian and world tour. Alan Hind, 10 Eyewitness News.
To begin his Australian tour, doesn't do a lot of this sort of thing nowadays. In fact, he's hardly done any radio since the 60s and the Beatles. But Bob Geldof, former Boomtown rat and the organiser of Live Aid, who's here for a week's work as a DJ, scored a coup by having Paul as guest on his show.
Well, I went on ITN, the man from ITN showed up. He said, "Tell me, Paul, have you ever taken LSD?" I said, well, I don't really want to spread this news around. I said, and it's going to get spread if you ask me. But I had to own up, and I said, yeah, I have, you know. And, of course, he spread the news, you know. But, no, the thing is, I think there are dangers for young kids. So with my own kids, I try and tell them what I know about it, what I think are the most harmful stuff, what I think are the most unharmful things. Let them get on with it themselves and recommend a kind of healthy lifestyle. Yeah. And that may be age, I don't know. It may also be wisdom.
Responsibility, too.
Yeah.
Hit.
John Mort, 7 Nightly News.
And roll legend is clearly enjoying his extended stay.
It's lovely to be in Perth.
And after a few autographs for the still adoring fans, it was upstairs to meet an old friend. They're both about 15,000 kilometres away from home, but Paul McCartney and Bob Geldof have been mates since the ex-Beatle agreed to top the bill in the worldwide Live Aid concert, which raised millions for Ethiopia and won Sir Bob a knighthood. The pair talked about the pitfalls of fame.
We met Del Shannon once, and
well, that's a biggie.
We didn't really want his autograph, and he said, "Do you want my autograph?" And we said, "Oh, yeah."
The Beatles...
But John was great. He was a great genius, you know, and I was very lucky to write with him. But I think he was lucky to write with me, too, he said modestly.
And taking drugs.
The thing is, I think there are dangers for young kids. So with my own kids, I try and tell them what I know about it, what I think are the most harmful stuff, what I think are the most unharmful things. Let them get on with it themselves.
One of the biggest stages ever seen in Perth is waiting to host Friday night's concert at Subiaco Oval.
It's a balladeer, you know, and then you can kind of say, wait a minute, I've done I'm Down or Helter Skelter or stuff like that. But they still remember your biggie. You know, your big thing.
You've had about 96,486 biggies, Paul. So it's a bit of a problem. You know.
Sir Bob is in Perth this week doing a stint as a disc jockey. Paul McCartney is in town to kick off his world tour. They caught up for a chat today, and all of Perth got to listen in.
But it's no skin off my nose if it doesn't get to be as good as something, you know, that was from the Beatle period. Because at least I was involved in that, you know.
No, I don't think you should say. You should shut up saying that.
The organiser of the Live Aid concert, which raised millions for the starving people in Africa, and the ex-Beatle have been mates for years. So Perth got to hear a relaxed and candid Paul McCartney.
And yeah, going into the later part of the 60s, that did take a hold, and we got albums like Sgt. Pepper, basically because everyone was getting stoned, yeah.
The ex-Beatle will perform at Subiaco Oval on Friday night.
There have been some great performances on Subiaco Oval, and Paul McCartney's hoping that he and his band can fly as high as the West Coast Eagles when they kick off their Australian tour here tomorrow night.
When I was younger, so much younger than today,
Paul is 50 now, 30 years on from when it all started to happen for the Beatles. He seems pretty relaxed about it all. He says he's done a lot since the Beatles, though people still tend to see him in a certain
it's
way.
typical, like, you get your image, and I think when you write something like Yesterday, people sort of say, oh, well, that's great, but he's a balladeer. And then you can kind of say, wait a minute, I've done I'm Down or Helter Skelter or stuff like that. But they still remember your biggie.
On Perth Radio with former Boomtown rat Bob Geldof, Paul talked about writing songs with the late John Lennon.
When we wrote together, there was no question of him, words, me, music. It was like it happened at the same time. One day John will write the words, so most of the time we'd both write them together.
Word must be out in Japan that there are still tickets available for tomorrow night's show. These fans flew in from Tokyo this morning. After Perth, the McCartney show, the biggest rock and roll outfit to tour Australia, will head to the eastern states. John Mort, 7 Nightly News.
I'm Anne Ford. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Paul McCartney's world tour was launched with dazzling special effects at Subiaco Oval last Friday, performing hits old and new for 2.5 hours.
Fantastic! Oh my God! It was so brilliant!
The majority raved about the concert, except for the West Australian's arts critic, Ron Banks. His review said many fans left wondering if their recession dollars were well spent on this limp squib of a big gig.
I think a limp squib's something like sort of that. I don't think our show's like that at all.
The 50-year-old rock and roller said he was only just told of the bad review, which went on to say the media hype surrounding his visit led to expectations that simply couldn't be fulfilled.
I saw a lot of faces, and I didn't see anyone, angry or shouting, like, give me my money back. So, I mean, you just have to live with it. It's unfortunate, but I understand he got a lot of flack for saying that, and a lot of people wrote in supporting us, so that was nice.
McCartney says he always ignores the critics. That didn't stop him from firing a salvo of his own.
The critics are there, bless them. And there's always one that it pays him to do the snide article. We all know that. We're all grown-ups, we know that. And so you just have to live with it. It's a fact.
60,000 people crammed the MCG last night for the first of 2 Melbourne concerts. Not so scathing, the Melbourne critics gave the concert the thumbs up, as did the majority of the audience. Meanwhile, Linda McCartney took time out today to meet the stars of Neighbours, her favourite soapie, and preached the benefits of being vegetarian.
One of the girls went veggie, and she said, well, if it's good enough for Paul McCartney, he can go veggie. And I went, yes.
Despite the controversial start to his tour, McCartney continues to travel the country, playing to sell-out audiences. Alan Hind, 10 Eyewitness News.